was, had already disconnected. He dropped his cell phone on his desk and leaned back in his chair. Unbelievable.
A few weeks? You've got to be kidding.
The screen between the two desks didn't offer much in the way of privacy. It existed more to keep him and Tom Brisbane, his business partner, from throwing balled-up paper or shooting rubber bands at each other during working hours.
It's about Graham,
Finn replied. Tom had known his family long enough, so he didn't feel a need to say more.
It always is.
A low chuckle filtered through the screen.
I love that woman.
So did Finn, which was the only reason he rolled into Blackberry Bay at 10 minutes before 10 the following morning. The quaint little town nestled around a bay off Lake Winnipesaukee attracted tourists year-round, thanks to their proximity to a popular ski area, as well as the water. But summer was their booming season, and he had to roll the big Harley-Davidson to a stop at what felt like every crosswalk in town. He had clothing and toiletry staples in one of the big side bags, and what amounted to a mobile office in the other, because he hadn't wanted to pack up his truck and give his family the impression he was on board with an extended stay. After going over the calendar, he and Tom had marked the meetings Finn couldn't miss, but there was no reason he had to be in the office otherwise. The day-to-day of their financial management company could be run from practically anywhere, but he didn't want anybody to know that, especially Graham. Because 3 road construction zones in 20 miles had slowed him down, Finn went straight through the intersection with the right turn that would lead to his parents' house, figuring they'd already left, and followed the bay for another 1.5 miles until he came to the winding driveway leading up to his grandmother's house. Finn's grandfather, may he rest in peace, had been one for maintaining appearances, and the outside of the massive Victorian on the hill, overlooking Blackberry Bay, was in pretty good shape, though it was starting to show some wear and tear. The clapboard siding, some original and some not, was painted a muted salmon color, and the door and many windows were trimmed in a cream color. It caught the eye without being garish. Blackberry Bay didn't do garish. The 2-car garage that had been built to replace a torn-down barn, as well as an original shed that was almost as big as the garage, were painted to match. And if there was one thing Graham could do well, it was tend gardens. From the road, her home was a picture of historical grace and elegance. Inside, it looked like the 70s and 80s were having an everything-must-go rummage sale. Or it usually did, anyway. He'd had a busy month at work, so his visits to town had been quick ones. And after visiting his parents, he'd made time for a glass of lemonade with Graham on her front porch. But sometime between his last time inside and today, a whole lot of stuff had been removed, and somehow he doubted she'd randomly decided to do a mass decluttering. "We're in here," his mother called when he gave the front door the extra little shove it needed in order to latch properly behind him. As if they were ever anywhere but in the kitchen. His footsteps were loud in the foyer as he walked past the doors to the living room and the sitting room, and damn if anybody had ever been able to tell him the difference between the two, other than one having a television and the other having the most uncomfortable wing-back chairs he'd ever sat in, to the kitchen. His parents were seated at the butcher block table several generations of weavers had taken their meals around. They were dressed in their usual jeans and T-shirts, though his mom had a lightweight cardigan over hers. They both had short dark hair, liberally sprinkled with gray, and gave him matching, tired smiles. Graham hopped down from the bar stool she'd been sitting on in front of the counter, since the kitchen didn't have a center island. Her gray hair was long and loose around her face, and her white tank top, peach capris, and white tennis shoes made him smile as she opened her arms for a hug. Graham refused to age gracefully by seemingly refusing to age at all, thank goodness. "You made it." She looked at the clock on the wall and then pinched his arm just hard enough to make him wince. "Barely."
"Hey, barely counts. And of course I made it."
He pulled out a seat at the foot of the table and sat. Graham followed suit, sitting across the table from his parents.
"So I'm here. Somebody tell me what's going on. I have good news."
Graham clapped her hands together one time while his father groaned. "Do you know that show, Relic Rehab?"
"Nope."
Her shoulders drooped. "You really should watch more TV, you know. Anyway, they remodel historical homes with businesses in them, and they're coming here to remodel the Bayview Inn."
"Okay."